Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. So today what we're taking a look at is AI room calibration. So this is a setting on the LG Wi-Fi app, AI room calibration. So this is a setting that you can enable, a sort of mode that you can enable on the SN11RG soundbar. And as you see there, calibrate the sound for the space. So if we click onto this and I do cancel, it'll actually let me go into it, initialize. So initialize basically clears the existing calibration. So what I'll do is I'll just come into it and we'll just quickly read what this is doing. So calibrate the sound of your speakers for listening well, it says for listening space. Presumably this should be for your listening space. Be careful when you start the calibration, as certain sounds will play and may automatically increase the volume for better results run in a quiet state. So basically what this is going to do is it will switch the soundbar through to a non-input state. Currently, if you look at my volume setting, it's currently on 8. What this is going to do is it's going to actually bump that up to around 20, I believe, when it's actually running the test. And what I'm going to do is, because of the way that this works, I don't believe my microphone will actually capture it correctly. So what I'm going to do for that portion of the video, I'm actually going to disconnect the microphone and I'm going to record that using the iPhone's internal mics. The reason for that is you'll actually be getting stereo sound, whereas with the microphone that I'm using, you only pick up mono, so single channel. So what I'll do is I'll just stop it now and then we'll start that test. Okay, so here we are back, and what I'm going to do is just hit start and let's see what happens. Okay, so that's the calibration run. As you can see, it doesn't take very long at all. And now what I'll do is, it may not come up on camera, so you might not be able to tell on camera, but I'll try and describe what I'm actually experiencing in person. So this is before. And this is after. Okay, so straight off the bat, the main thing that I've noticed is it's reined in the bass quite a lot. So in the before sort of setting, you're getting a little bit more boomy bass. So you're getting a little bit more vibration, rebound within the room. And in the after, it's slightly tighter and you're not getting so much of that sort of rebound. Now this, presumably, at the moment, my subwoofer is down there. So it's on the left-hand side and currently it's facing this way. Now, usually when I'm watching movies, what I'll actually do is I'll have it facing the back of the room. So then the bass is actually projecting as far as possible before it's rebounding off anything. And also that way, you're not getting left and right sort of vibration and rebound, or reverb as they say. When I've run this test just now, obviously I've left the subwoofer where it was. So for that reason, it's gonna basically tune it to whatever it thinks is happening at that time. So the one thing about this, as far as I'm aware, and what from my testing, is you need to actually put your speakers and everything in the position that you're going to want them for when you're actually watching content. So for example, obviously as I've just said, I've got the sub down there and it's facing this way. So it's facing that side of the room. What I need to do is, after this video is over, I need to rerun this. So I need to initialize and rerun this with the sub facing towards us. That will then tune it based on that, because obviously there's much bigger distance between when the bass actually kicks in and where it's actually projecting to. At the moment also, the rear port on the subwoofer is pretty much right next to the wall, so that also gives it a bit more room to actually operate in. Now, some people have also said that they've experienced a slightly wider soundstage. As I've said, what normally tends to happen is, depending on how you've got your speakers laid out and where you're sat when you actually run this test, that will be more or less prominent for that reason. Right, just before going further, I do want to just switch back to my normal mic, just so that I can actually move away. Okay, so here we are back on the normal microphone, and basically, the last few thoughts that I actually had was coming from the SL10RG, which was the 2019 flagship, and coming to the SN11RG, which is the 2020 flagship. I think the biggest difference that I've actually noticed is how clean and crisp everything is during movies, because my primary concern and use case for this is movies. I've not bought this for music or anything else. It has all those options built into it, but that's not what I've purchased this for. So the reason I purchased this is obviously to give me that immersion during movies. Now, one other thing just to note is currently, if you just look there, obviously I've got my subscribe to MA Tech sign there. That was actually a gift from my daughter, so I like to feature that in as many videos as possible. That obviously right now is actually blocking the left side channel. So all of these little things will actually make a difference in terms of how that initialization should, in theory, operate. So what you want to do is make sure you get it set in the way that you would normally have it. So normally, when I'm not making a video, this wouldn't be here. That would be hidden away somewhere. So then it's not actually blocking that speaker. All of these little things you want to try and get right. And ideally, what you want to do is sit in your seating position, because that way, when you're watching the movie, that is where you're going to be. So if you're blocking any sounds bouncing off walls or anything like that, that's what it would actually be like in the real situation. Whereas if you're say for example you're stood right in front of the center channel and it's trying to test how far that's projecting, it's going to think something is blocking it straight away, and in theory it will either increase or reduce that accordingly, which may or may not be the result that you actually want. So basically use this as a real case scenario. So you sit in your exact seating position, so then you know exactly what type of sound you're going to get. It's not a massive difference, so it's not night and day, so it's not something, it is a little gimmicky still, but from my experience, what I found is it just reins the bass in a little, and basically because you're doing that, it'll obviously allow everything else to actually be a bit more prominent, and perhaps that's why most people think it actually extends the soundstage slightly wider. Either way, that is the end result that it gives you. It is something that's worth running, but for those of you out there, and there have been a lot of you that have actually left comments on other videos, especially the unboxing video about lack of bass, for you guys, perhaps you want to actually try deleting the AI room calibration and test that way, because obviously what it's doing is it's reining in the bass by doing so. So if you're really struggling with the lack of bass, then you might want to actually basically remove that initialization and see whether that actually makes any difference for you. You may find that it's actually better for your room, especially if you like a lot of bass. I don't like massive amounts of bass. I used to. Now what I prefer, especially in movies, is accurate bass. So I want it there when it's needed, but I don't want it just rumbling like crazy. For anybody that thinks this doesn't have bass, I would suggest you go on Netflix and test it with the movie 6 Underground. That is one of the worst movies I've ever watched when it comes to bass reproduction. Netflix cranks up the gain so much on that particular movie that, especially that start sequence where they're racing through the city, there's just uncontrollable amounts of bass. That was the one movie in the whole time I had the SL10RG where I literally had to go into negative figures for the subwoofer, because it was literally giving me a headache, because it was just constantly booming bass. There was no real punch to it, there was no kick to it, it was just booming all around constantly. It wasn't really in tune with the vocals either, and that was the biggest sort of drawback on that particular movie for me, the fact that it doesn't really kick in or out with any particular action. It's just constant, and that can be fine in movies where perhaps you've got like explosions, and especially with Greyhound. So for something like Greyhound, I think that sort of constant rumble where there's explosions and things going off all around you, that would make sense. But in that particular movie, it doesn't really line up. So if you're thinking that the subwoofer doesn't have enough bass for you, watch that movie. If that movie does not produce bass for you, then yes, you have something wrong with your system. If that movie is fine for you, then more than likely it's just settings, and obviously that's something that you can tune and fix accordingly. So hopefully this video will have helped some of you guys out there that have concerns or thoughts about AI room calibration, or just the SN11RG sound system on its own. So hopefully this has helped some of you guys out there. For anybody out there that isn't already subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell icon, that way you don't miss out on any videos. And other than that, thanks very much for watching.